It's time to break out the stupid juice because Zapdos is stupidly good. It's by far the best out of the original three legendary birds. It's an electric flying type, which means, as far as our type breakdown goes, we are immune to ground. We have a resistance to bug, fighting, grass, flying, and steel, and then we only have two weaknesses to rock and ice. And that rock weakness is not a 4 times weakness, which is just wonderful. As far as our stat breakdown goes, we have 90 HP, 90 attack, 85 defense, 125 special attack, 90 special defense, and 100 speed. And having access to electric and flying is just a wonderful stab combination right there because you can hit a lot of things super effectively with that. As far as our abilities go, we have pressure, which doubles the consumption of PP points from moves that are used against Zapdos. And then we have Static, which gives you a 30% chance to spread paralysis to anything that makes physical contact with it. And that is a wonderful status condition to be able to pass on because not only does it slow them down, but it potentially makes the afflicted Mon miss their turn potentially. And honestly, that could be a game-breaking situation right there. You're in a 1v1, you're really similar speeds. Zapdos might be slower, or it could be just a speed tie right there. Your opponent makes that physical move onto Zapdos. Zapdos just barely holds on, causes the paralysis from Static. Your opponent misses their next turn. Zapdos comes in and gets the KO for the win. That could be wonderful right there. And that's probably why you should always be running Static over pressure on Zapdos, whereas with Articuno, you can make the case between pressure and Snowcloak. And honestly, it's really similar to Moltres, where it's got the flame body and pressure. So just keep that in mind when you're working with your Zapdos. If you need to use an ability patch to get Static, I would highly recommend using that ability patch to get Static. As far as our first set goes, what I have here is, it's actually an older set from Smogon right here from Generation 8 from VGC 2022. And basically here we have 20 EVs into our HP, 4 into our defense to gain 1 extra point, 164 to hit 166 points into our special attack, 68 into our special defense to hit 119, and then max speed investment on a Timid Nature. And the idea here is, back in the day with Generation 8, this was meant to take advantage of Dynamax, giving you access to max lightning to set up electric terrain, max airstream to increase your speed, and then max flare to hit bulky steel types. But what I was thinking here is, this might still be good on a terrestrialized format right there, because you do get a little bit of bulk with that special defense and HP investment while maintaining a lot of special attack investment and speed. If you go Tera Electric, you're doubling Thunderbolt's base power, and if you don't want to run Thunderbolt, you could make the case for running Thunder instead, and then that way, instead of going for a base 90 power move, you can go for the 110 base power move, throw it on a rain team right there, and then you're getting your double stab from Tera Electric. If you wanted to go Tera Flying on Hurricane, you could also do that too. You would basically go up to 220 right there, with the confusion odds right there being fairly decent right there. And then you have Heat Wave. I don't recommend running Tera Fire on this thing though. This is more just for hitting things that would otherwise just be resistant to the combination of electric and flying. And plus, it would be a good way of threatening steel types right there. Now, the last move here is Detect. And now Detect is one of the few moves that is similar enough to Protect. It's basically a carbon copy of it. It came out in the same generation. And basically the idea here is, why Detect over Protect is, if you're running up against Imprison and Protect, basically what Imprison does is it seals away the moves that the Imprison user has. So no other Pokemon can use that move. So basically what they do is they put Imprison and Protect on the Pokemon, and then you get locked out if using Protect. Now there's significantly less Detect users than there are Protect users, so the idea here is you run the Detect at the cost of less PP points, but you're not necessarily getting locked out by Imprison, and then you can still save yourself if you're worried about taking a hard-hitting attack. That's the main idea with Detect. As far as the item goes too, the recommended item was the Life Orb as well as the Safety Goggles, and the trade-off is, what you can do is you could use the Life Orb to gain a third of extra damage at the cost of a tenth of your max HP to further boost the power of those moves, Or if you want to run safety goggles, you're running that and you're protecting yourself from moves like Spore that would otherwise shut you down by putting you to sleep. Now, the interesting thing here is with Regulation D, instead of necessarily running safety goggles, you could make the case for running the Covert Cloak because Sneasler can potentially put you to sleep with Dire Claw. And I don't think safety goggles are going to stop you there. But at least that way, if you run the Covert Cloak, you don't have to worry about Sneasler and its Dire Claw. And plus, with Hurricane being able to just absolutely decimate Sneasler with its fighting type, you got a good means of deterring it to either make it fake you out, which Covert Cloak would also protect you from, and then go for the Hurricane too. Then that way you get rid of Sneasler. That was the main ideas for this very first set. Now, if you wanted to run a bulkier support idea, what we could do is we can slap a Citrus Berry on Zapdos, or like I just made the case for the Covert Cloak, you could do that too. And we could run Eerie Impulse, which basically would lower the special attack of the target by 2, so that could be really good, especially if your opponent doesn't have a clear amulet, maybe pair a Frisk user next to Zapdos just to double check what the items are if you're playing on the ladder. If you're playing in a closed team sheet format, same idea. If you're playing open team sheet, that could be a little bit safer there that way too. You have Tailwind to double your speed for the party as well. Tailwind is just really great speed support. And then what we could do is we could run Discharge as an attacking option here, and then that way you have a 30% chance to paralyze the target. It's not only just a spread move though, it can hit your partner as well. So what you would want to do team building wise is you would probably want to pair a ground type mon next to this, or something with Terra Ground or the telepathy ability, or even just go for Protect on Zapdos's partner, and then that way you go for the Discharge, and then you can potentially cause paralysis on both targets on your opponent's side of the field. And then we have Heat Wave just there for some generic damage. You could switch this out for Detect, you could switch this out for Heat Wave, you could switch this out for Hurricane, and then just go from there. But what I was thinking is at least this way we hit the grass types that would resist Discharge, so long as they're not a fire type cosplaying as a grass type with Flash Fire, obviously. But that is one thing to keep in mind. You could also run the Hurricane on that to get around Terra Grass Pokemon that are immune to fire type attacks, or just straight up grass types. You could do that and have Stab as well. Finally, let's get into the next two sets. So, or actually, before we go into that, let's talk about the stats. Max HP investment, Bold Nature with 36 to hit 121. We have 132 to hit 162, because that's still a respectable number for damage. 76 to bring us up to 120, and then 12 to hit 122. And the speed was just kind of left over on there. You could play around with the numbers. You could do this a little bit more offensively if you wanted to lower the points into the defenses. You could do that, but the nice thing too is you do hit that extra benchmark with the 36 on the 121. But what I was thinking is you could also lower this and that to increase your special attack to 170, and you could just still do a good amount of damage with the Discharge, Hurricane, or whatever your other attacking option is. So now let's jump into the next set. This first one here is Choice Specs, and spoiler alert, the next one is going to be Choice Scarf. But the idea here is max speed, max special attack. This one's going to be for the idea behind a rain team right here, so that you don't have to worry about Thunder and Hurricane potentially missing outside of rain. You have the ability to just reliably land those hits. They're both base 110 power moves. You can go Terra Flying or Terra Electric to double your stab on both of those. If you go Terra Electric, you would also benefit from Volt Switch getting its stab doubled, because what the idea here is we can use Volt Switch as a pivoting move. Maybe if you run into a situation that Zapdos doesn't like maybe you have an opponent with a bulky Groundmon, like say maybe Ursaluna, you could Volt Switch off of the partner, potentially break a Focus Sash, get Zapdos out of there, and then bring something that would be a little bit better equipped to deal with that. Like maybe if it is hypothetically Ursaluna, you could Volt Switch and pivot from your Zapdos into an Urshifu, and then from there you have Close Combat and Unseen Fist that you can just hit through Protect. You could go with Surging Strikes if you have a Rapid Style Urshifu, and then that way you can just guarantee a crit with 3 hits, and then just do massive damage that way. On top of that, if it's not, like, say, Ursaluna, maybe it's Garchomp, you could Volt Switch away, bring in, like, say, Iron Bundle. You could slow it down with Icy Wind, or just straight take it out with Freeze Dry, not Frost Dry. Man, I'm off with the moves today. But anyways, with freeze dry, you could just straight up get rid of it as well. So that was the main idea with Volt Switch, and then that way, Heat Wave, I'm basically beating a dead Mudsdale at this point. It hits the grass types that weren't fire types with Flash Fire. That's what you can do with that, and it's basically just coverage here. In Generation 8, you had access to Weather Ball, which would have been really nice for Zapdos to keep, but a lot of things lost access to Weather Ball in Generation 9. Otherwise, I'd say have the Weather Ball, and then that way you could go with water with it, but in this case, Tera Blast. Tera Blast would probably be the other move if you didn't want to run Heat Wave. Like maybe say you're a little bit worried about Dark types, you could go Tera Fairy, and then that way you could have Fairy type Tera Blast. And that's mainly just the example that I'm bringing up for Tera Blast right here. I don't really know why otherwise, but yeah. Something about Tera Fairy on Zapdos just seems kind of appealing to me for some reason. I don't know. With your Tera options, you can just mix it up. You could also go Tera Grass, and then that way you not only become immune to Spore yourself, but you could also hit water types that could potentially dodge Thunder and Hurricane. You could also hit ground types, because that is one glaring weakness in this right here is you can't hit ground at all with electric type moves. Shocker, I know, right? The other thing too is if you're playing Hurricane shenanigans and you either run out of rain or they're just really bulky and they can hit you hard, it wouldn't hurt to be able to pivot into a grass type and then just go Tera Blast to try to get rid of them that way. So that is an option as well. Now let's get into the Choice Scarf idea. Instead of Thunder, I have Discharge. And the idea here is, you might be wondering about the Great Tusk. Well, the Great Tusk is going to be kind of like a play on basically an older idea where you would use Zapdos and Garchomp with Discharge and Earthquake. And what I was thinking here is you go Choice Scarf Zapdos or Choice Scarf Great Tusk, and what you could do is you can go Earthquake, so Zapdos would be immune to Earthquake, and then Zapdos can go Discharge, Great Tusk would be immune to that, and then you can just hit the opponents really hard with good spread damage from both Earthquake and Discharge. You might potentially paralyze them with the Discharge. If you do, Great Tusk would greatly appreciate that, and then it could just proceed to just hit them even harder. If you're running a Choice Scarf on Zapdos, I would recommend the Focus Sash on the Great Tusk. Otherwise, you would probably want to run Choice Scarf on Great Tusk, but I did do a little bit of looking. If you run a Jolly Nature on Great Tusk and you don't run any attack investment, it is technically possible to get a booster energy speed boost, but I don't think it's worth it. I think you want that attack investment onto the Great Tusk, so there you go. And plus 183 stab Earthquake is going to hit a lot of things relatively hard. Now, if you run into the ruinous treasures like Ting-Lu and Wo-Chien, probably the worst combination for that, but at least you have the close combat option on Great Tusk that you wouldn't have to worry about locking into if you're running the Focus Sash. So there is that, and plus Zapdos could run the Heat Wave to hit Wo-Chien or just Volt Switch out to bring in something that could hit it. And then as far as Ting-Lu goes, well, Ting-Lu is Ting-Lu. You're playing the fissure game. You're playing the fissure game at that point, anyways. But yeah, anyways, guys, that's my main thoughts on Zapdos. You can run a older variant of the Dynamax VGC 2022 EV set. If you wanted to, you could run bulky Eerie Impulse Tailwind support, or you can run a choice item there. So anyways, let me know down in the comments below what you like the most from this idea and how you play your Zapdos. Let's get the conversation going.